There's a moment when someone questions your intentions in front of everyone and time seems to stop. You feel all eyes on you, that awkward silence that seems to last an eternity, your heart racing as everyone waits for your reaction. It's that instant where most people make the costliest mistake of all, showing too much interest in defending themselves. The average person immediately responds, explaining in a slightly nervous voice, justifying every word, offering details no one asked for. They try to appear reasonable while their eyes desperately seek approval. They believe they're projecting confidence, but what they're actually conveying is neediness and emotional dependence. It's precisely at that moment that they surrender all their power, because by showing so much interest in defending themselves, they're unconsciously admitting that the other person's opinion holds more weight than their own truth, and that power, once relinquished, never returns to your hands. In the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal why never showing interest is the silent weapon Machiavelli used to keep his power intact. You'll understand the psychological error that makes you seem insecure, even when you're completely right. You'll learn the exact technique applied in 3 situations you'll face this week, and you'll discover the complete system that makes you emotionally invulnerable. Because here's the truth no one dares to tell you. He who shows interest subordinates himself. He who remains indifferent dominates. If this has already made you think, hit the like button now and join me. Think of chess as a perfect metaphor. Most people believe chess is about aggressive attacking, about chasing down every one of your opponent's pieces. But grandmasters know the true strategy is selective indifference, sacrificing what seems valuable to get what truly matters. It's precisely that mindset we'll build today, step by step. Let me explain exactly why showing interest is the costliest mistake you make day after day. The root of the problem is deeper than you imagine. From childhood, we were programmed to seek approval. At school, we desperately raise our hands for the teacher to notice us. At home, we strive to impress our parents. And that pattern, that constant need for external validation, became our emotional prison. The average person, when they feel their image is on the line, immediately shows too much interest in defending their position. They speak faster, raise their voice, interrupt to correct every small detail. The result, they seem insecure and desperate, even when they're right. Meanwhile, the strategic person maintains a calculated emotional distance. They show no urgency to defend themselves. The result, they project a magnetic confidence that commands automatic respect. The consequences of showing too much interest are devastating and cumulative. In the short term, you lose power in that specific conversation. In the medium term, people unconsciously label you as someone who needs approval. And in the long term, the most destructive thing, you internalize that dynamic and begin to see yourself as someone of lesser value, someone who must constantly justify their existence. But why do we fall into this pattern again and again? The psychology behind it is fascinating. Our primitive brain is programmed to seek group acceptance because, evolutionarily, being rejected meant certain death. That ancestral fear of exclusion continues to operate in your modern mind. Every time you feel the urge to over-explain yourself, to show too much interest in what others think, you're responding to that primordial fear of being cast out of the tribe. It's like a dog frantically wagging its tail, seeking approval. It might seem friendly, but what it truly communicates is subordination. Meanwhile, observe an alpha wolf. Its stillness, its apparent indifference. It doesn't need to move frantically to establish its position. Its calm is precisely what communicates power. The average person, when criticized, responds with a torrent of explanations. No, what I meant was, or, I don't think you understood me. Or even worse, I'm sorry if I made you feel that way. But they show an excessive interest in correcting the perception. The strategic person, faced with the same criticism, responds with detached curiosity, interesting perspective, and maintains a comfortable silence. They show no interest in changing someone else's opinion. Perhaps you've experienced that moment in a meeting where you passionately defended your idea, and the more you spoke, the more resistance you felt, as if each word sank you deeper. Or that time you extensively explained your actions to your partner, only to find that every explanation made things worse. Or when someone questioned your professional experience and you fell into the trap of desperately listing your accomplishments, feeling your credibility erode with each word. Perhaps you perfectly recall that feeling of having spoken too much, of having shown too much interest in defending your position. and the uncomfortable certainty that somehow you lost something important in that exchange, like a poker player revealing their hand too early. In the digital world, it's even more apparent. That extensive, detailed response you wrote to a negative comment, believing you were clarifying your position, when in reality you were elevating your critic to a position of authority over you. Excessive interest is like quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. And here's the hidden cost no one mentions. Every time you show too much interest in defending your image, you don't just lose power in the eyes of others, but you erode your relationship with yourself. You begin to doubt yourself internally, to question your inherent worth. You become your own harshest critic. The strategic person protects their internal authority above all else, while the average person sacrifices it daily on the altar of external approval. But identifying the problem is only the first step. Now I'm going to show you exactly what to do, with specific instructions for the 3 most common situations where we fall into the trap of showing too much interest. The core technique is called strategic indifference, and it works in 4 very precise steps. First, you internally recognize the urge to defend yourself, that physical sensation of urgency in your chest. This creates a microsecond of distance between the stimulus and your response. You'll notice your breathing wants to quicken. Second, you deliberately reduce your emotional investment. You lower the internal volume of your emotions like turning down a song. The result is an immediate change in your body language. Third, you respond from a position of detached curiosity, not defensive need. Finally, you redirect the energy by remaining comfortably silent or subtly shifting the focus. Most people respond with frenetic, defensive energy. You will respond with calm, observant energy. The difference isn't subtle, it's vast, because he who shows less interest always controls the interaction. Imagine you're in an important meeting. Conference room, 10 people around the table, projector on. You present your proposal and a colleague says, "I don't think you've considered all the risks." Their tone is slightly condescending, their eyes seeking approval from others. Most people react immediately. They lean forward, speak faster, interrupt. No, I did consider the risks. In fact, on page 7 I clearly mentioned that." Their voice rises. They gesticulate more. Their gaze nervously jumps between those present, seeking allies. The more they explain, the more they seem to be asking permission to exist. The room perceives it. The atmosphere changes, but not in their favor. You, on the other hand, do something entirely different. When you hear the criticism, you inhale softly. You don't lean forward. Instead, you maintain your position, or even lean back slightly. You let a full 3-second silence fill the room. Those 3 seconds feel like an eternity to the critic, but they grant you an aura of absolute control. You maintain calm eye contact, not aggressive. Then, in a measured voice, slightly lower than your usual tone, you say, "That's an interesting, observation. What specific risks do you believe I haven't considered?" Now you've completely inverted the dynamic. You didn't show interest in defending yourself, but genuine curiosity. The critic must now elaborate, justify themselves, fill the space. The others in the room feel the shift in power. The less interest you show in defending your image, the more solid it becomes. In the personal sphere, the same dynamic operates with even greater force. Imagine your partner says to you, "Lately, you haven't been paying attention to me. You're always on your phone." The common response is defensive and eager to justify. "Of course I pay attention. Just yesterday I listened to you for half an hour when you were telling me about your work. And the phone thing isn't true. I only check it when it's important, plus you're on yours a lot too." Notice how every word reinforces the perception that you feel attacked and need to defend yourself, showing an excessive interest in changing your partner's perception. The strategic response is radically different. When you hear the complaint, you pause, put down your phone if you're holding it, and look at your partner with calm attention. You show no rush to defend yourself. After a moment you say, "I understand you feel that way," and you wait. Perhaps you add, "Tell me more about that," without a defensive tone. You neither deny nor confirm the accusation. You show no interest in proving your innocence, but in understanding their perspective. The result is extraordinary. Your partner feels that you're truly listening to them, not just waiting for your turn to defend yourself. By not showing interest in protecting your ego, paradoxically, you generate more respect. The conversation transforms from accusation to connection. In the digital world, where interactions lack the nuances of body language, the technique of not showing interest is even more powerful. Imagine you receive a critical comment on social media. Your content is superficial, you clearly don't know the subject. The typical reaction is to write a lengthy point-by-point response, defending your knowledge, citing your credentials, explaining your research process. Every word communicates, "I care a lot about what you think of me." The strategic response is minimalist. You wait at least an hour before responding. Time communicates value. Then you write something brief like, "I appreciate your perspective," or "interesting point of view," or you simply like the critical comment without adding anything else. The absence of defense communicates unshakable confidence. You show no interest in changing the opinion of a stranger on the internet. He who writes defensive paragraphs loses authority. He who responds with selective detachment gains it. But be careful, there are 3 common errors when applying strategic indifference. The first error is confusing indifference with passive aggression. This happens when you respond with a sarcastic or condescending tone. The result, you generate resentment instead of respect. It looks like detachment, but is actually thinly veiled hostility. The correction is to maintain a genuinely curious, non-confrontational attitude. The second error is inconsistency. Many apply the technique correctly at first, but under the slightest pressure, they collapse and revert to showing excessive interest in defending themselves. This happens because they haven't truly internalized the principle. The solution is to apply the technique in low-pressure situations first, until it becomes second nature. The third error, the most subtle and dangerous, confusing strategic indifference with total indifference. This error makes you seem disconnected or arrogant. If you notice people perceive you as distant or cold, you're overdoing the technique. The correction is to show genuine interest in others while maintaining strategic detachment from opinions about you. All of this works perfectly on a tactical level, but there's a deeper dimension that transforms this technique from a simple social strategy into a powerful life philosophy. The counterintuitive truth most people never understand is this: your worth doesn't increase by showing interest in defending it, but by acting from the unshakable certainty that it already exists. This is the secret truly powerful people have known throughout history. Society as a whole operates on the premise that you must constantly defend your worth, that you must show interest in what others think of you, that you must justify your place in the world. From the education system to workplace dynamics, everything reinforces this message. What others think of you matters greatly. But when you look closer, a fascinating contradiction emerges. The people who most desperately try to prove their worth are precisely those who receive the least respect, while those who act with quiet confidence, without showing interest in defending themselves, are the ones who generate the most magnetic attraction. This contradicts everything we've been taught. The profound truth is exactly the opposite. Your worth is inherently undeniable, and any attempt to defend it automatically diminishes it. It's like trying to prove the sun shines. The mere act of trying to prove it questions what should be obvious. When you internalize this truth, the world responds to you in a completely different way. Niccolo Machiavelli, in his lesser-known work, Discourses on Livy, recounts how the Roman general Coriolanus maintained his authority, not through passionate speeches defending his decisions, but through a strategic disinterest in justifying himself. When questioned, he responded briefly and redirected the conversation towards the interests of Rome, not his personal reputation. This apparent indifference to his image paradoxically strengthened it before the Senate. Machiavelli observed that this pattern was repeated in all truly effective leaders. They showed a deep interest in their mission, but a calculated disinterest in defending their ego or reputation. This subtle distinction was so powerful that Machiavelli considered it too dangerous a secret to share openly. Have you noticed how the most confident people in a room are the ones who talk least about their achievements? Observe how true experts never rush to prove their knowledge. Even in nature, alpha predators rarely waste energy on unnecessary displays of strength. Think about that time you felt completely sure of something, so sure that you didn't even consider the possibility of having to defend it. Perhaps a skill you've mastered for years, or knowledge you deeply possess. Did you notice the inner calm, the absence of a need to prove yourself? That state of mind, that natural indifference to external validation, is exactly what we're cultivating here, but applied to your inherent worth as a person. True power isn't about being right, but not needing to be right. So, how do you truly internalize this principle? The transformation occurs when you stop seeing strategic indifference as a technique you use and begin to experience it as a natural state of being. The change isn't behavioral, it's perceptual. Before you thought, I must control myself not to show too much interest in defending myself. Now you understand. There's nothing to defend because my worth isn't up for discussion. When you truly internalize this principle, you begin to notice subtle signs of transformation. You no longer feel that knot in your stomach when someone questions your decisions. You don't mentally rehearse defensive arguments before important meetings. Criticism becomes genuinely interesting to you, not threatening. Situations that once provoked a defensive urgency now seem like opportunities to observe and learn. And most revealing, when you speak, you do so from quiet conviction, not from the need to persuade. The master of this principle operates from a different reality. It's not that they better control their reactions, it's that their fundamental perception has changed. They see others' attempts to question their worth as understandable confusions, not as threats requiring defense. They act from a place of internal abundance, not scarcity. They don't need to win arguments because they don't see life as a competition for validation. Because he who has relinquished the need for approval has found the only true freedom. Now it's time to transform this understanding into a practical, integrated system. I'll give you 3 precise tools you can master immediately to incorporate this principle into every area of your life. The first tool is called strategic pause. Essentially, it's the art of inserting space between the stimulus, when someone questions your worth, and your response. You use it specifically when you feel that visceral urge to defend yourself, when defensive words are about to spill from your mouth, or when you notice sudden tension in your body. Here's how it works in detail. When you feel the impulse, take 1 deep breath, focusing on the sensation of the air. Then mentally count to 3, maintaining relaxed eye contact. Finally, slightly lower the volume and pace of your voice before responding. For example, when someone says, "I don't think you're qualified for this project," you breathe, count to 3, and then say in a calm voice, "I understand your concern. What specific aspects are causing you doubt?" Do not vary this basic structure. This precision creates a pattern of strategic disinterest that projects immediate authority and generates a sense of depth in the listener. The second tool is called curious redirection. It's the art of transforming defenses into genuine questions. You use it when someone makes a statement about you, when you feel the impulse to correct a misconception, or when you find yourself in a potential conflict. It works by following this process. First, you internally acknowledge your defensive impulse without acting on it. Then you formulate a question that invites the other person to elaborate on their perspective. Finally, you listen attentively to the response without mentally preparing your counter-argument. For example, if someone says, "I think you're avoiding responsibility in this matter," instead of defending yourself, you ask, "That's an interesting perspective. What specifically makes you think that?" The effect is immediate. The person must now justify their position while you maintain calm control of the conversation. The third tool is selective validation. It's the art of acknowledging perspectives without necessarily accepting them as truth. You employ it when you want to maintain connection while preserving your authority, when you need to de-escalate conflicts without conceding your position, or when you seek to conclude an unproductive interaction. It's implemented like this. First, you identify an aspect of the other's communication that you can honestly validate. Then you acknowledge that specific aspect without compromising your position. Lastly, you smoothly transition to your focus or conclusion. For example, if you receive criticism about your work, you can say, "I sincerely appreciate you sharing your perspective so frankly. It shows your commitment to quality. I'll consider these points as I move forward with the approach I've defined." You're neither defending nor justifying, but acknowledging the communication without ceding authority. The person without influence defends themselves. The person with mastery selectively validates and redirects. Now I'm going to give you a surgical plan for the next 7 days. It's not abstract theory, it's a precise implementation protocol. For the first 2 days, your sole focus is applying the strategic pause. Don't try to master all the tools at once, just this one. Every time you feel the urge to defend yourself, and it will happen at least 3 times in these 2 days, deliberately apply the pause. Breathe. Count to 3. Lower the volume of your voice. It doesn't matter the context. Work, family, messages, with friends, with strangers. What you'll notice, on the first day, you'll feel an initial discomfort, as if you're suppressing something important. That's normal. By the second day, you'll perceive a subtle shift in how you internally react to criticism or questioning. People around you will notice something different but won't be able to pinpoint exactly what. Pay special attention to their body language. You'll see less aggression and more openness. On days 3 and 4, you add curious redirection while maintaining the pause. Now you have 2 active tools. When you feel the urge to defend yourself, not only do you pause, but you formulate a genuine question about the other person's perspective. The combination creates a synergistic effect of calm authority. Here the game visibly changes, because you're subconsciously communicating that you value understanding more than being understood. You'll notice your internal anxiety significantly decreases, that people begin to elaborate more on their perspectives with you, and most importantly, that conflicts de-escalate before they can escalate. If you experience some fear of losing your chance to defend yourself, it's a sign that the technique is working. Adjust the intensity of your questions if you notice they seem like interrogations rather than genuine curiosity. Days 5, 6, and 7 are for refining and integrating selective validation. Now you're operating with the complete system. When someone questions your worth, strategic pause. When you need more information, curious redirection. When you want to conclude the interaction, selective validation. Specifically observe how your internal need to explain yourself diminishes, how others' receptiveness to your ideas increases, and how the power dynamic in your interactions transforms. Adjust your body language if you notice persistent tension. If someone mentions that you seem different or more confident, it means the system is working and you should continue exactly as you are. At this point, you'll already feel a concrete transformation in your interactions. It's not imagination, it's the measurable result of operating from a new paradigm. And this is just the beginning of your evolution. But pay close attention now, because there are 3 fatal errors that can sabotage everything you've so carefully built. Error number 1. Confusing strategic disinterest with emotional coldness. It occurs when you apply the technique mechanically, without maintaining human warmth. The result, people feel an invisible barrier between you. It looks like strategic detachment, but is actually emotional disconnection. The specific correction is to maintain genuine eye contact and a relaxed facial expression while applying the tools. The disinterest is towards defense, not towards the person. Error number 2. Inconsistency when facing authority figures. Many perfectly apply the system with peers or subordinates, but completely collapse when facing bosses, important clients, or family authority figures. This happens because patterns of subordination are deeply ingrained from childhood. The specific correction is to deliberately apply the system in low-risk interactions with authorities, such as asking a simple question to a superior using the strategic pause. Error number 3. Abandoning the system after the first success. This subtle error occurs when you experience positive results and, paradoxically, that leads you to believe that you've mastered it and can revert to your old patterns. If you find yourself thinking, "I no longer need to consciously apply this," you're falling into this trap. The correction is to set a daily reminder for at least 30 days, until the new neurological pattern is completely installed. He who masters this system doesn't just change their interactions. They transform their entire reality. Let's recap then, but not as an academic summary. I'm going to give you the 4 pillars that now define your new way of operating in the world. Pillar 1. Showing too much interest in defending yourself is a subconscious declaration of insecurity that erodes your authority and programs you for constant external validation. Pillar 2. Strategic indifference is implemented through 3 precise techniques: the pause that creates space, the redirection that inverts the dynamic, and the validation that maintains connection without surrendering power. Pillar 3. Your worth is inherent and undeniable. Any attempt to defend it communicates doubt about its existence and paradoxically diminishes it in the eyes of others. Pillar 4. The integrated system transforms your reality when you apply it consistently for 7 days, creating new neurological patterns that redefine how the world responds to your presence. These 4 pillars aren't motivational theory. They are practical architecture for personal influence. He who demonstrates less transmits more. Now comes your challenge, and it starts exactly today. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, today. Within the next 24 hours, a situation will arise where you'll feel the automatic urge to defend yourself. It could be a comment about your work, criticism of a personal decision, or even a subtle questioning of your knowledge or experience. You'll know exactly when it's the moment because you'll feel that familiar tension in your chest, that urgency to explain yourself immediately. When it happens, I want you to apply the strategic pause in its purest form. Breathe deeply once, mentally count to 3 while maintaining calm eye contact, and slightly lower the volume of your voice before responding. Not a diluted or approximate version, exactly as I explained it to you. You don't need to announce you're trying a new technique. You don't need to explain anything. This is the beauty of the system. It's invisible to those who don't know it. Because when you do, 3 things will happen. You'll notice an unusual sense of inner calm while you speak. You'll observe a subtle change in the other person's facial expression, and you'll experience how the dynamic of the conversation shifts in your favor. This is your moment of truth, your chance to prove to yourself, not to me, not to impress anyone else, that this principle isn't abstract theory, but practical, transformative reality. And after you do it, come back here and comment on your specific experience. I want to know exactly what you observed in the other person's response when you applied the strategic pause. Comment exactly this, word for word. Less interest, more power. This isn't a simple comment. It's a declaration of identity. It demonstrates that you didn't just passively consume these minutes, but that you understood the transformative essence of the message. That you are not part of the majority who seek superficial techniques, but rather one of the imperturbable. Those who have understood that true power lies in the strategic selectivity of their interest. This is our password, our shared code. I will read each of these comments personally, and I will know exactly who understood the depth of the message and who merely skimmed it. And since you've made it to the end of this content, there's something I deliberately didn't mention before. In the next video, I'll reveal the other side of this principle, the strategic art of showing selective interest. It's about the perfect balance between indifference and fascination that Machiavelli used to turn enemies into loyal allies. It involves the principle of emotional reciprocity, and it explains why the most influential people in history mastered not only the art of concealing interest, but also of strategically demonstrating it. But that's material for our next conversation. Subscribe now and turn on notifications. The next video will be available in exactly 3 days. Remember the chess metaphor I mentioned at the beginning? Now you fully understand its meaning. It's not simply about moving pieces strategically. The true chess master doesn't show interest in every piece on the board. They deliberately sacrifice some, feigning indifference towards what seems valuable, to achieve the only thing that truly matters: checkmate. You no longer need to show interest in every opinion, every criticism, every questioning. You are the master of your board, because he who needs less attracts more. Now go and demonstrate precisely nothing.